like within the nightmare, there was some sense of like, oh, and then you're attached to a dream. Now you're worshiping a false blue sky that really isn't there, and now you're just as attached. You're attached to some nonsense. When do you know what I'm saying? Like,
I know what you're saying, and it's even, I mean, there's even a term for it when you go more deeply into it. It's called the stink of enlightenment. That you've had these experiences of openness and you want that, you're grasping at it, you're trying to find it and hold on
yes,
to it. You can't hold on to it. It comes from non-grasping. And uh, Pema Chodron has this line, you're not the sky. I mean, you're not the weather, you're the sky. You're not the weather, you're the sky. But also, you're the weather, in my humble
right,
opinion. I mean,
right.
that's the tantric view, that even the anger, even the clouds is who you are. Let me read a very short part of a poem by Rumi. So in this poem, there's this guy who's complaining to God that his prayers are never answered. He never has anything back from God. And Rumi in God's voice says, "The longing you express is the return message. The grief you cry out from draws you toward union. Your,
Uh,
your pure sadness that wants help is the secret cup."
Holy shit.
So let me read that again. The longing you express is the return message. The grief you cry out from draws you toward union. Your pure sadness that wants help is the secret cup. So it's not that those things are impediments. They're it. It's all it. It's all the beloved. The beloved can only be everything.
It's like the longing is the tractor beam. You think the longing is coming out of you. You don't realize the longing is pulling you in. And that is so wild. That is so wild. So the longing is good news. Good news that you have
Yeah.
this aching, rotten, like feeling of wanting your mommy or something, and you can't find her in the mall. Good news, because you have longing for something now that you didn't even know about,
Yeah.
and now that's incredible news. That if you've just achieved longing, you're there somehow.
The longing is God's response. He's saying, "Here I am. Yeah, you want this," and the longing itself is the knowledge that that's the return message. That's the secret cup. That's drawing you toward union. And once again, it's frustratingly slow. Ram
Yes.
Dass said he said one of the qualities that is the main determiner of how quickly we make progress on the spiritual path is how long you're bummed out when you fall down and get off the path. Like,
Whoa.
can you just get up and get on with it? Or are you saying, "Oh, fuck me, look what I've done,
Right.
what a lousy meditator I am"? And there's this
Yeah.
guy, Sri Aurobindo, who had a metaphor. He said, "I was walking down the road and God knocked me over and I fell in the mud and I got up and I was shaking my fist at God saying, 'Why are you doing this to me?' And I got so mad at God, and then I continued down the way and God knocked me over again and I fell in the mud again and I got up, and this time I didn't yell quite as much, but I was really mad. And then finally I got so far down the road that God knocked me over. I just got up and started walking again."
At some point, you should be like, "Hey, is there any way you could stop knocking me over, please? Maybe we could just walk together." What happened to footsteps in the sand? Aren't you supposed to be carrying me, and then it's your footprints? But yeah, I love that. I think that yeah, I know what you mean, because one of the I think unnerving things about potential fruition, or whatever you want to call it, is that if you've been meditating for a while, you do experience these tiny, tiny glimpses. I mean, in the early days of me doing this, I would get so certain. I'm like, "Oh, well, there it is. I guess I got enlightened." And then, the next day, I'm just a monster, and I'm paranoid, I'm angry, and it's like, and so then I started getting nervous if any of those things would appear in the meditation practice, because I would think, "Oh boy, yeah, here we go." This means some rotten version of you is on the way. And you do know what I mean? It's like it's at some point, I don't know, I started getting nervous about any of these things. Just in the sense of like, look, I don't want to get my heart broken here. I don't want to get attached again to some idea that, you know what, this stuff is working, and I'm not going to keep hurting people around me with my untrained mind. I'd rather just be a beast and just, that's what I'm like, than get these like little intermissions between beast moments.
But would you rather really be a beast, or would you rather be on the path to, even though it's difficult? Once you've tasted that spaciousness, Duncan, I don't think you can turn away from it. You'd like to, but it's always going to be there. It's like once you've had acid, life before acid is not possible. It's
That's
just
right.
it's gone. It's gone forever.
That's right.
That
That's
level
right.
of delusion is gone.
Right.
There's another level of reality that is at least, if not more real than ordinary getting up and eating Cheerios, and we know that that's there. And that, so what you're talking about is a stage where you're afraid that you're going to get hold on to this stuff, or it's not going to work out.
Fall off the bike. Fall off the bike. You remember, I don't know, I mean, you remember when you learned to ride the bike? And then it's like the first few days of bike riding are not exactly like pleasurable because of the terror that the thing's going to tip over.
It's scary as hell, to be sure. But once again, those moments of freedom of you're coasting down the street on your bike and the wind is in your hair, and you're all of a sudden you're moving in a way that you never did before. It feels like so good. It feels like there's an aliveness there that you can't really turn back from.
I have tested, I think that I was listening to Pema Chodron, this wonderful seminar she gave on Way of the Bodhisattva. I've been listening to that, and she was talking about how in Buddhism, this invitation to really test it. And I always took that as a kind of intellectual analysis of the Four Noble Truths. And she was like, see if you can break it. Yeah. In kind of what you're saying, like, now try to fall off the bike. Try to not see it. Try. Can you try to not see it? Like, try to get it away. Try to like blank your mind and get back to that place. Right. And I love that. I never understood that's actually what it meant. It was like, is this breakable? Where? Right. And I think that's a really joyful thing to hear, that potentially upon catching enough of a glimpse of the thing, you really just might not have to like sink back into that level of the nightmare. That's a really beautiful thing. I'm happy to hear you say it.
Ram Dass and I and some other friends taught a course at Trungpa's Naropa Institute, the first summer at Naropa. And Trungpa students were very wild. They were having these like orgies, and there was like young girls and major drinking. But what Trungpa told his students, he says, meditate a lot, take care of your body, and do whatever you want to do. Right? Yeah. And so people would have these like wild Friday night parties, and then Saturday was the all-day meditation, and you're trying to meditate, not me, but his students are trying to meditate with a major hangover. Didn't feel very good, right? And they, instead of saying, in fact, Maharaji never said to people, don't do this. He said, well, if you do that, here's what might happen. I'm like, if you smoke a lot of dope, it heats up the brain, or if you do this. But he would never say, don't do that. He would say, just keep loving God and trusting God and do what you want to do, and it's all going to work itself out.
Did you get invited to any of those orgies?
Wouldn't you like to know?
I
would. Well, it was a kind of a weird time, Duncan. It was 1974. It was right after Maharaji died. So we were all kind of in a slight state of shock, right? That
yes,
we thought he was immortal, that he was like the strongest thing on. He was stronger than Mount Everest, like, and
Right.
then he dropped his body, as they say. So, I mean, uh,
You
I
answered the question already.
I did do this one thing. Trungpa had a paper called On Conscious Drinking, not unconscious drinking, but on conscious drinking. And in the paper, he said that if you stay really mindful and clear as you get drunk, you won't get drunk in the same way. And in fact, one night he gave a talk. It was so brilliant that at the end of the talk, I went outside of the auditorium and the trees were glowing with consciousness. But when he got that talking, he'd had a carafe of sake next to him. He'd been drinking all night.
Yeah.
He got up and he fell on his face. But he was still so clear that the leaves were glowing with consciousness. So my girlfriend and I got a big bottle of sake and we said, let's try this. And we sat down, we started meditating. And every 5 or 10 minutes, we took a big slug of it. And at the end of an hour, I felt like I was on a psychedelic. My mind was so crystal clear. I was so wide awake. Ego completely dissolved in sake.
Wow.
And when I tried to get up to pee, my body was totally inebriated.
Yeah. Yeah, I know what you mean. This is a reduction of what you're saying, but I can remember in the old days when I take acid and drink, and the alcohol would not have dilute the consciousness, acid consciousness. So like I can specifically remember drinking and drinking, feeling as clear as a bell and getting up, and it's like, oh wow, I am hammered. My legs are not working, but I'm clear because that was very good LSD. We didn't have access to what y'all had access to when I was coming up. Like we didn't have the Sandoz ampules, or I can't even imagine what y'all had. But every once in a while you would find some that wasn't terrible.
Yeah, we had some good stuff. Ramdas, one time, he was cleaning out, he stored his stuff in my garage in Santa Fe, and he said, hey, here's a sheet of Owsley acid. Do you want it? I said, oh, sure. And but it was really old. So I would give it to people, and they had one of two experiences. Either nothing happened or it was the best trip of their whole life.
Wow.
And nobody knew which one it was going to be.
Wow. I guess it just depended on where, where the photons hit it. I've heard that it's photoreactive. So
Yeah.
regardless, for me, I can remember when I was drinking, I stopped drinking. When I was drinking, I can remember being quite excited about this prospect of continuing my alcoholism and still being it's somehow working in my life. And then it just didn't work. I couldn't do what he was recommending. I couldn't mindfully drink. I'd
Right.
heard here's what you do: drink. But the moment you're not doing mindful drinking, stop drinking. But my problem was I wouldn't stop drinking.
Once you start, there's no stopping. I mean,
Right,
that doesn't work that way.
exactly. But I would do that's how I would get into it. Is I'd be like, okay, tonight this will be a mindful drinking night, and then a couple of glasses of white in, it's like, yeah, what nonsense. Let's just drink, and then I'd feel like garbage the next day. So, but I love it. I love what you're saying. And I do agree with it. I don't I actually feel excited for people who can successfully drink, because it's like, good for you. Like, look, you sipped a glass of wine through the whole meal. Wow. That's better than telekinesis. That's,
I know. It's a major talent to have.
it's a talent that is, but don't you think, even though in Tantra, it's there's also some aspect of know yourself. Don't trick yourself into thinking you're doing spiritual drinking when you're blacking out, or when you're getting you're having physical disruptions with your body, that you're getting fat and you're getting puffed. Don't you think there's at that point you're like, okay, well maybe tantric drinking works for enlightened Tibetan masters, but
I'm not even sure it worked for Trungpa. I mean, he probably died of liver disease. But
right.
just as an example, think about saying a mantra from the very first stage of practice, we're saying a mantra of, please God, show up. I kind of know you exist. I trust that. I know people that believe you. I felt it before. I don't feel it now. Please, I'm invoking.
Yes.
And then as you do that enough, gradually, hopefully, the heart opens. And as you're saying, so just say you're saying Ram. Om Mani
Yes.
Padme Hum Ram. You're saying Ram. And it's a love relationship with you and God. It's like back and forth. It's juicy. It's great.
Yeah.
But when you get to the tantric stage, when you say Ram, the sound is God. That just saying Ram is God.
Yeah.
That there is no distinction between God, the sound Ram, and you or me who's saying it.
Right.
So that each time you're saying the sound, it's God is there. And so it could be the same thing with anger. In the beginning, you want anger to go away because it's messing up your life. And then you're having more of a love relationship with anger. There's a lot of juicy energy there. You can use it to be creative. In my life, this is maybe too personal, but if I don't either meditate a lot or have orgasms or do something deeply creative, I get angry because it's the same energy. It's got
Wow.
it's got to go somewhere.
Wow. Wow. You just answer. Oh my God. I never made the connection. I know you probably have this. You go in, you go in to write, you go in to make whatever it is you're interested in making, or you're just going in with the impulse of, I'm going to make something. And for whatever reason, the stars don't align and it just doesn't happen. It's very similar to, and maybe this is being too vulgar, blue balls. It's like nothing, nothing. But
Nothing's being created.
And then at the end of those days, that is for sure rough evenings. That is where I'm pissed. I feel grumpy. Wow. Because it's not that you're angry because you didn't make anything. It's that didn't get expressed. It didn't get alchemized. That's what you're saying. Wow. That's wild.